All right. Here we are live again, Eric, at the Harbor Gig podcast with Mark, who I asked his last name 10 seconds ago. I think it's Modarelli.
Well done.
Okay, I got it right. Good. I thought I forgot it already. I've got a little bit of dementia happening.
Yeah, it makes two of us. It's all good.
We are going to talk to Mark about his experience at Bellarmine and whatever else comes up during the show, and about literature, right? And
might be in politics, maybe.
We're going to go to politics.
Whatever.
It'd be a tough thing to keep. We have a kind of a guiding principle of keeping things positive.
Sure.
So
Yes.
that'll keep me.
Is there a guiding principle about the conversation veering in any directions? Because that's what I've noticed.
Oh yeah, it's absolutely got to veer. We veer.
It's
That's
a veer
what
with
we do.
beer.
You want it to be organic, right?
But that guiding principle of positivity might make it difficult to discuss the current political situation. For me, I don't know how y'all feel. So,
We'll see.
Well, I think there's a positive way to approach anything.
okay.
Even if you regard the situation as negative, right?
Yep.
If you have positive direction or a way to look at things, we want to do that. And
Hey,
one of
we
the
can talk about it. That's a positive. That's
Right?
the great thing about being here. We
That's
can
right.
talk about it.
Yeah.
you got to be
Free
grateful for
country.
that,
Right?
man. Gratitude or resentment. That's how you're coming at life,
All right.
either with
All right.
gratitude or resentment.
Thanks for resetting my perspective, Mark. I'm in a better place already.
I'll
Oh, man.
also say these four young ladies, did you all have
Natalia, Kate, no Kate, Catherine,
Catherine,
Katie,
Kristen,
Catherine, Kristen, Natalia,
Jim.
Jim,
Jim is a nice young lady.
Rob,
I'm a nice
Eric.
young lady too.
the owner of Gig Harbor Audio, and our
And Aaron and Ada.
host, and Aaron and Aiden. Ada. Okay.
Boy, someone's eating a good smelling bit of food.
All right.
Smells
That's
yummy.
Katie.
So,
Yeah.
Did you get that from Harbor Greens?
No.
what are you eating,
Waiting
Katie?
for my discount. This is from Jersey Mike's.
Jersey
Jersey
Mike's.
Mike's. My mouth is watering.
Did you get the Jersey sauce?
Oh, yes.
You can't have a Jersey Mike without the
Get it
Jersey
Mike's
sauce.
way.
Have you ever been to Jersey?
Mike's Way, that's it.
So,
All right.
folks, we're nicely having a wonderful experimental IPA from Seven Seas across the way, is my understanding. And then with the smell of the food, this place is just rocking.
And I've got a
Good odor.
cold pour over coffee on ice with a little sugar and milk.
Right on.
Yeah. I gotta ask, where's Larry? What happened to Larry?
So Larry texted back and he said, "Yeah, we're making Tom Collins. It's going to be great." And then last night he said his wife bought him tickets, surprise tickets for something.
I miss Larry. We haven't seen him the last couple times. Larry's our cocktail guy,
Ah,
and he mixes up a mean cocktail.
lovely.
He's not here physically, but always with us in spirit.
In spirit,
right?
you bet.
Yes.
there you go.
Cheers.
Yeah.
Here.
Yep.
Yeah, cheers to Larry. So, Eric, why don't you get us started? You,
Well, the main reason, besides him being a fairly nice guy, of having Mark Modarelli here, is that I like literature. Those people like literature, especially my daughter, I think. I think you guys all like literature. And literature is...
They're going to say that when I'm here, but yeah.
We'll have to check their grades later on.
Right.
it's not literature. Literature.
Yeah. Good stories, good stuff that you can read and talk about. And it's also a pretty big part of Gig Harbor Audio in that we, besides me just liking books and stuff, which is ironic because I don't really read anymore, but we'll get to that.
We're surrounded by books.
Yeah.
The reason
Yeah, great
why
collection.
books are in Gig Harbor Audio, a stereo store in the first place, is because we were looking around to treat, like to sound panel some of the walls over there, and it's really expensive, like the stuff like that on the wall.
Yeah.
It's like $175 just for that.
Just for that one tile.
And so we started putting books in certain places, and it's kind of like in a recording studio because it's different surfaces.
Yeah.
And it works perfectly. is better, actually. And then you have things that you can actually pull off. So then we started looking around for books, and the store down the road, Mostly Books, was going out of business, so we bought the entire collection.
It's now mostly real estate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. Mostly real estate, that's right. Anyway, so it just seemed to fit perfectly to have Mark here.
And it makes a place feel like home, too, with, by the way, books.
Yeah.
And if you haven't been to Gig Harbor Audio,
You
I
gotta
mean,
come
what
on
a
down
great
and try
place
it.
to come, sit down, grab a book, listen to some tunes on
And the
probably a
sounds
much
are
finer
great.
stereo
The
than
sounds
the
are
one you
actually
have in
great.
your house.
Ah,
And,
shut up.
Hey,
know.
well, I got a question. How do wine racks work for sound-absorbing devices?
well, you need reflection as well, right?
Well, you want the
Wouldn't
sound
they
to
be
bounce
more
around.
reflectors?
Well, you want reflectors behind the speaker so the sound comes out at you, but then behind you, you want things to absorb the sound so it doesn't bounce back around.
Glass is an X factor.
Yeah.
You don't know what it's going to do.
Oh, I like that. The
Yeah,
X Factor.
me too. That's cool.
Yeah, you don't know what it's going to do. So it's like hard to... It might
Glass
work
is hard.
in some places.
Cool.
So anyway, that is why this man is here.
Okay.
That was the idea, and we thought it fit perfectly. And we're also, I don't know how good of friends you are with Bill.
Yeah. Good friend of mine, yeah.
But he's probably best friends with my best friend's brother, Steve Bird. From
Okay.
way back when. And it's, Mark was always a guy who I looked up to in high school. You know, he's 3 years older, and obviously now.
Yeah. It's not the years, it's the mileage, man.
May I ask you?
Yeah.
When I was teaching English, I would be fairly excited about choosing a new book for the next year. What is the book that you're most excited to do in the fall?
We're doing this new program. We do summer reading every year, but now we do where the whole school reads the same book. So we try to find a book that all the grades can read, and
The whole school.
yeah,
reads
over
the
the
same
summer.
book?
It's like
And yeah, so we did The Boys in the Boat last year, which is that great book on the UW crew team. And this year we're doing Ursula Le Guin's Wizard of Earthsea, which I've taught before in the sci-fi fantasy class that I taught. It's a great book. And Le Guin's local. She recently passed away, so it's very timely. And yeah, I'm excited for that. And then teaching Life of Pi every year is just... I changed lives with that book. That's a tremendous book. So, but
Boy, that's a statement from a teacher. You change lives with that.
Life of Pi. Oh yeah, yeah. It's a powerful book. And I don't know that he's got another one in him. I mean, in his other stuff, Jan Martel. His other stuff.
So how do you change lives with a book like that?
Have you read it?
I haven't read it, actually. So maybe you'll change lives?
That would be difficult to explain. But well, I mean, Martel. I don't know. He somehow manages to get everything in there. Kids will come out and go, I learned more about religion from reading this book and talking in this class than anything else. And
So it's an eye-opener.
yeah, it really is. It's about a kid who his ship sinks and he's stuck in a boat with a 300-pound Bengal tiger at sea for
I've seen the
265
movie,
days.
but it's
See, and the thing about and I always
do the book justice.
no, because it's a book about stories. It's a book about reading and the stories we tell ourselves and how we
nice.
create our consciousness, how we create our understanding of the world. Tremendously powerful. And but you know, one of the things that I'm always trying to tell kids is, you know, the ship's going to sink at some point, and what are you going to do? It does for all of us, and
Oh, I like that.
and it's a tremendous lesson in that, and for kids to read it. And the great thing is, I've often said we could teach it across curriculum because he does a lot with math, and he's at sea for 227 days, and 22 divided by 7 is pi, and when the kids realize that, they go, "What? No way!" And they realize, you know, how much craft is in this book.
My son would like that.
It's remarkable. Yeah, it's tremendous. So, yeah, that one is always fun to teach. But really, I mean, for me and these guys, I'll tell you, I teach an AP course, AP Literature. I was I'm PhD ABD at UW. I never finished my dissertation, but all my graduate work is in British literature, so teaching that class in the big Norton anthology, and when I was teaching at UW, I just found that people didn't have a grounding in the core texts that have really informed Western civilization and understanding, particularly our civilization. And a lot of my colleagues weren't teaching them, and certainly a place like UW, grad students are usually teaching stuff they're studying as well, but they're working on their doctorate or whatnot. So you might get a course in colonial literature or Alexander Pope and women, or women writers of the 18th century, which is all good stuff, but if you don't have that core context of the significant authors, it's difficult really to appreciate and understand that. So that's where my real passion is. These guys will tell you. Sometimes they leave and I'm like, you guys, I'll probably just sit here and keep talking about this stuff after you're gone because I'm having so much fun with it, right?
Oh, that's really cool.
Yeah.
Really cool.
That's the nice thing about professors and that. I was working with a professor who's at Princeton, and we were talking about some stuff. His wife came and said, "You're not supposed to have so much fun at work."
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
No, I always tell my students, I go find something where you don't feel like you're working, and you'll be all right. Mm-hmm. I mean, my dad always used to say, you work and then you do what you want to do after that. And I'm like, yeah, but you love doing surgery. So,
mm-hmm.
but what else would you want to do? He's like, oh, that's a good point.
And you got to be careful what you choose too, because if you choose something and you get used to all the perks that come along with it, and then you decide, hey, I'm not digging this. Mm-hmm. It's hard to jump ship and do a course correction to get back to the life of Pi. So, better to, follow your heart first and build off of a strong core.
Yeah, well, and especially, for kids, because one of the great things about the book is he starts out, as a kid, he's interested in religion, and he's raised his aunt takes him to a Hindu temple, and he loves it, and then he decides he wants to be a Christian after he meets a priest, and then he meets a Muslim baker who he wants to study Islam, and so then he tells his parents, I want to be all three, and you can't do that. But
why not?
He says, I just want to love God, and he practices all three. And I tell the kids, I go, it's that gets him through. Yeah, he knows how to swim because his uncle taught him, but it's these three faiths that he had and that belief in something larger that's what gets him through. And if you don't have that core when the ship sinks, you got no reason to keep going.
Right.
So.
I think it's interesting, too, that you brought that up about, the ship is going to sink.
Yeah.
Over and over and over.
That's right.
And I would think it would be difficult, in the high school or junior high area to get that concept across.
Right.
Just because, they may have a ship that's sinking and they think it is life and death. Mm-hmm. And we as adults who have been through a few ship sinkings and are kind of callous say, oh, man, it's no big deal. You're going to have much bigger problems than that. Yeah. Just chill out. That's a pretty tough concept to get across to the kids.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
Do you remember Doc Beatty?
Sure. So taught me AP Euro.
Yeah, I had him for economics.
Uh-huh.
And he said at the beginning of the class, if any student reads one of these two books, then you'll get extra credit for this or that. And I was a horrible student. Horrible, C solid, C minus, average. So and it wasn't that I tried to be a bad student. I just knew that I couldn't pay attention, and I couldn't pay attention to things. Mm-hmm. So it would always, I could always pull it to a C minus. So I'd always look for extra credit. So I read one of the two books, Siddhartha. Mm-hmm. That he was like, for what teacher who teaches economics would say, well, read this, and I'm going to give you extra credit for economics. Mm-hmm. And then I understood it after you read it. It's like all of these really great books should be read by every class.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. In a school.
Yeah. No, I agree wholeheartedly on that. Yeah, I read War and Peace for him. I was taking AP Euro, and I read War and Peace, which I might have read the Cliff Notes, but that's a novel in itself. The Cliff Notes of War and Peace. I might have cut some corners on that, I think we've lost a lot of, for the longest time, education, and certainly university education, it really wasn't where you went and learned your field. It's where you got the grounding. So going back to the Renaissance and the humanist movement and stuff, humanism, not the movement, but there were these core things: rhetoric, mathematics, music, whatever. But there was this understanding, and even when my dad went to St. Peter, the reason I went to Bellarmine is my dad went to St. Peter's Prep, a Jesuit school in Union City, New Jersey. And you would take Latin if you were doing the sciences, and you would take Greek if you were doing the arts, and you would have these core texts. So everybody had done the Odyssey and the Iliad, and so that, when somebody said, oh, that's his Achilles heel, right? Everybody would know it. It was a question of what you were trying to do was shape people to be members of society, right? Not to be specific jobs. They would learn their job when they were doing their job, but it was really about rounding someone out to be able to think critically and to ask, certainly the Jesuit tradition, and to ask questions because you needed to be able to be a participating member in your vote or whatever it might be. And that is what we've lost a lot of.
Mainly agree with you. I went to University of Chicago, great book.
Oh, sure.
And which I had a lot of the basic grinding, which I really appreciate. It's just, I got my degree, and all of a sudden there's this additional hurdle that I have to work my way through to actually get myself prepped for what I wanted to do.
Right.
And it's kind of like, grrr.
Yeah. No, and I think a balance in that is always important. Anymore, it seems like it's a funny thing that's happened. And my daughter will be starting at UW in the fall, and she's doing engineering or stuff. But there's just been a real... I mean, you can take so many different classes, and there's so many subcategories. And when I was in graduate school, it was people are carving off little niches and becoming experts in, these ever-increasing specialized fields and conferences and stuff, And I remember I submitted a paper for publication, and it was rejected, and they explained why. And then she ended the letter by saying, join the club, come to our conference, and all this. And I thought, club? What do I get, a jacket or something with this? I thought we were just talking about ideas, and right, that it was, I didn't think it was this select group. And the oddest thing for me was how many of my colleagues in the doctoral program at UW weren't interested in teaching. Yeah. Most of them were interested in publishing and research. And if I needed something research, they were great for it. Mm-hmm. But it was shocking to me, because to me it was always about if you were a professor, you're kind of supposed to be professing something.
Well, you're right. I mean, especially in the technology fields, there's so much to know that people get really heavily siloed. Mm-hmm. And the joke kind of makes sense. Is a mine 3 miles deep and about 2 millimeters wide. Mm-hmm. You need to have people who have a broader base in society itself too, because they need to be functioning adults in society.
Yeah.
And human beings. Not just a.
Oh, geez.
Yeah. You get back to when that ship's going down. A good general knowledge of what's going on around you is a helpful thing.
Well, you got to have the tools to do it.
I know. I forgot there was an alarm still on there. My bad. Well, and it's it's kind of a perfect storm, because David Carr talked about most people are jet skiing, and we're not scuba diving anymore, so to speak, on life. The information age, the idea that...
just skimming the surface.
Yeah, that,
the soundbite generation.
Well, sure. I mean, it's changed the way people write articles. I was listening on the way over, this guy, there was an article, we don't have to get into the politics of it, but anyway, there was a headline, which was very, arresting, and then they had said the whole rest of the article never, ever says anything like what's in the headline.
Yeah, well,
but you reach the point where
manipulation.
Well, that's right. And because people aren't digging deep, right, aren't willing to, recognize, these things are complex. Yeah. That's what I'm always trying to impress upon my kids, is it's easy to, and if you haven't learned to read critically and pay attention, first test I give, if I say this, then kids who are in my class will figure it out, but I give a test on the first
Only
day.
If they listen to the show, and that's probably not going to happen.
Well, the freshmen and sophomores won't, because, they're sophomores, but that
probably won't click.
I've been teaching sophomores. The only class I've taught all 18 years, and I'm sure I tortured cats in a previous life or something, and that's my condemnation. But sophomore is the greatest invention in the history of language. It's wise fool, quite literally translated, right? It's an oxymoron. But I give them a test the first day, and it's read the following questions. When you're done, flip it over, and there's 5 multiple choice questions, and so they do it. And then I go, okay, now hand it to your classmate, and if they wrote anything other than their name on it, give them an F. And they're like, what? And I said, read the directions for me again. And it doesn't tell you to write anything. So I say 2 words, pay attention. That's it. And we're creating a society that's
And that
fractured.
Is
would
that
have
the
killed
one
me.
where it's like read
Yeah,
every
I would've
single
gotten
one
that.
before you start filling it out, and the last one says don't do anything besides write your name.
There you go.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
one.
And it says, got you again, John.
That's
Right?
Yeah.
Well, and we're just splitting attention at breakneck speed. I mean,
You know what's weird, though, because, yeah, I agree with you, and we all see it. But they also, I say they, I just raised a bunch of kids who are now college grads who are tapped into everything
Right.
all at the same time. They don't watch TV the same way I do. They don't read books the same way I do. They don't, but they seem to be doing it all at the same time.
Yes.
So, are they picking up something we're not
You
by
can't.
having a grasp of everything at the same time?
Right.
Or is it just,
well, I mean,
futile?
one of the things that I think, and we've had this discussion about technology in the classroom and screens and whatnot, and I think, first of all, the brain science is pretty conclusive that you can't do more than one thing at a time as well as the brain can do one thing.
I have an example of that. So 2 days ago, I was in Sedona working, and afterwards, I had to catch up on a bunch of phone calls because I was involved in what I was doing all day long and wasn't answering my phone or email or anything. So I made a couple of phone calls when I left Sedona and started driving back towards the freeway so I could head back to Phoenix. Well, I didn't pay attention to where I was going. All of a sudden, I was in Flagstaff, which was about an hour and a half in the wrong direction. So, yeah, I proved that one again to myself.
Welcome to the
Don't
club.
talk and drive, especially when you got the phone in your hand, because you miss some important stuff.
Well, you know, the technology piece is so important because we're not talking about just changing. My colleagues were always talking about, learning's changing, but you're not talking about just changing learning. You're talking about changing the definition of knowledge, what it means to know something. I mean, if you think about how many phone numbers we carried around in our heads in high school.
All of them.
I mean, all the phone numbers that you guys have for all of your friends, right?
We had
I mean,
all
and
of
it was, and there's something to be said for the brain's ability to organize and retain that stuff. And seriously, the rewiring, they're looking at kids who grow up on screens and they have difficulty manipulating blocks because their brain is evolving. And all that's interesting. But more than that, knowing where to find something or how to find something is not the same as knowing it. So if a kid does a presentation in my class, I go, look, if that technology goes out, you better be able to answer all these questions. And what's
But
lacking...
the technology never goes out.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Right. and the thing is, or if you think about, like me getting here just now, I just put the address in my phone, right?
Yeah.
You remember writing down directions,
Right.
and then having to look and pay attention
Yeah.
and read, and
Or
how
pull
much
out a
more,
map.
right?
North,
And-
south,
and-
east, west.
Or going to Bellarmine, right? There were kids from all over the area, so you started to figure out where everything was relative to one another. And again, what we mean by knowledge, you're able to locate yourself and situate yourself, and so spatially,
So when the ship sinks, you know how to deal with it.
that's right.
This ship thing.
I got.
It's tying it all together today, isn't it?
It's funny. My brother was a special agent in the Air Force. Did a couple tours over in Iraq and Afghanistan, and he said he was over there, and some guys in his unit were looking at the map, and he said, "Well, what are you guys doing?" And they were like, "Oh, well, the satellite's not up, so we're waiting." And he goes, "Have you got a compass?" And they were like, "What?" And he's like, "Fellas, right?" So now, of course, it's basic in the thing. They go, look, man, this stuff's not going to work, and you're going to have to be able to do it. Yeah. So, really, again, you're talking about changing what it means to know something. And the confidence you have when you get up and know something and have studied it, right, and you know it, like you have ownership of it, is so much. That's what I want to see for kids, because that's what you want to have, whether you're, doing a sales pitch or whatever, right? I mean, if you just know where to pull it up, I have a rule.
There's something about all that stuff, the technology that feels good because it's so unattached.
Right.
It's so instantaneous
Like
gratification.
It's just like it's far from you. It makes me think of David Foster Wallace. You ever read David Foster Wallace? He's like I think he killed himself a couple of years ago, but he wrote in a way that was like, I think Bill reads David Foster Wallace.
Yeah.
But he writes in a way that's like opposite of like a millennial's usual way of dealing with technology.
Mm-hmm.
Like he wouldn't use a computer at all. He'd use an old Selectric and whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And his books, they kind of like followed his like hyper trying to get down everything that was physical. So he'd have, footnotes about footnotes and everything.
Mm-hmm.
He would track. His books were simply just tracking everything in his life. So it didn't matter what it was. His memories about him playing whatever game or something, or crossroads and directions.
Mm-hmm.
But he would, and it was very boring.
Mm-hmm.
It was like reading Ulysses.
Mm-hmm.
It was like so.
There's
dense.
not a high enthusiasm level for reading these books when you say it's really quite boring.
Right.
Yeah, but it was. I mean, he was genius.
Yeah.
But when you read his book, Infinite Jest, or any of his short stories, you kind of see that he was fighting. That's my assumption. He's fighting something, changing values, changing ways of living, and he's no. I'm going to write down every single thing that I did in the last 2 hours. And that's going to be a book that's that thick.
Wow. That explains why he committed suicide.
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
It's like
exactly.
check out
Yeah.
David Foster Wallace anytime. Like, just Google him.
Oh.
It's so good. It's
Is
like
it?
thick, really good writing.
Actually, I like what you're saying, though. We do occasionally Luddite nights where we essentially abandon all the technology and, just all screens off, and if we can, we use candles and have a fire in the fireplace and, just kick back and enjoy life without technology. And it's actually, it's a really nice reset. It's kind of nice.
Well, I mean, yeah. I mean, I think being present, and I'm a big guy on gift and sacrifice theory. I did a lot of work on that in grad school, and the present is a gift, yeah, and to be present, to be present to someone else, even the way we're sitting here talking now.
Well, that's the problem with multiple screens,
Yeah.
if I may. Is you're not present with anything, and then I as a parent, I'm saying, get rid of all that stuff and be here with me and look at me with the interaction and everything else. I hear that from other parents as well.
Oh yeah.
Of course, it's maybe me being a cranky old guy.
No. See that, and here's the other thing
No,
about
it's not.
even
It's
for
multiple
example.
screens is in our house like every day. It's like, okay, we're watching this. We've got that on the screen.
Yeah.
Everyone has their phone. It's
That's
like
life
a
now.
little-
At two, Nat.
Multi-screen.
Actually, one of the saddest things I ever saw, I was out and I saw a guy out with just a gorgeous young woman. They're on a date, and he's screwing around on his cell phone. It's like,
Right.
get a clue.
I was out with my wife a couple months ago, and we went to dinner, and same thing. I was wrapping up some work on my phone, and she said, could you just be present and put the phone down for a minute? I'm like, you know what, I'm sorry, you're right.
Good man.
I'll watch it. Put my phone away. Well, like 3 minutes later, she's on her phone. Like, hold on a minute.
Yeah.
You know what?
Right.
I'm not the only one with this affliction.
No, and it is. It's a funny thing. I'm a recovered alcoholic, so I know about addiction and whatnot, and the way that thing works. And I watch these teenagers, and it's not going anywhere. But I also had the question: is it just that I'm old? A lot of parents are like, "Well, I like to read on a book, and that's just because I'm old." But increasingly, it's looking like, and I got a colleague there who he and I did a lot of work. He's our psych teacher, and we did a presentation on the page, and it's looking like the page may be the perfect technology for reading, for processing into long-term memory, because the screens, especially pads and phones, so kids, the brain doesn't shift gears.
You mean the paper page?
Yeah, reading in a book. And there's to talk about the map navigation thing, there's a great study on how when you remember something in a book, you remember how much of the book was in your right hand and how much was in your left and where on the page it was physically. And you lose that you lose that sense when you're reading on a screen, and obviously the muscle memory of taking notes by hand or making notes in the margin by hand. And so again, what we thought was, well, we're just old and we're not used to it, is actually a genuine concern, because the brain is fired in different ways. Dopamine's firing when the screen's on and things like that, and so things are not passing into long-term memory. And an interesting study that showed kids, so they gave kids, some kids paper text, some kids computers, and then they had them read something to see what they retained. Not only did the kids who didn't have screens do better, but the kids who were further away from the kids who had screens did better than the kids who were close to the kids who had screens.
Well, the other thing
in
I've
terms of
noticed
retention,
about,
it's
along
really
that
interesting.
same line is that, going to Kepler's books or any really cool bookstore and the smell of the books, and maybe they've got coffee, and you're standing around selecting a book, and you're looking at different titles, and maybe pick out something that you didn't come in for, where now I go on to Amazon and I select a new book, mostly based upon the stuff that they've got sitting there. We've selected this for you, John. And a lot of times I'll grab that, but I'm missing, the gem that I probably would have picked off the shelf. So, and you're interacting with people. There's other people in the aisle with you, and,
right? Oh yeah.
Just you're in the world. You drove your car to get. I mean,
no, that's exactly it.
Yeah.
I really learned that in grad school when I was at Portland State, because I took the bus to school.
Yes, we do.
And this was before, so, and I realized that, so I'm working on something at a desk, and then I think, and I get up to go to the computer or the card catalog back in those days, right? And all the time I'm turning stuff over in my head, and I'm thinking, and I'm processing, and I find what I'm looking for. Then I go, and you're right, there's all these other titles that may or may not be relevant, but there could be something that just, comes out. And so again, it's this business of scuba diving versus jet skiing, right? If you can just click, and not only, again, is it increasingly looking like there are people deciding what comes up in those searches repeatedly. This is the nefarious part of it to me, and why, again, positively thinking, you want to be critical, is that it feels like you're doing it on your own.
right.
But if somebody's controlling what comes up in the search first, you're not really. So it has the illusion of that. It's a really the need for that kind of critical thinking, I don't think, has ever been greater. I mean, and if you look at information ages historically, they usually are attended by some pretty radical upheaval. Usually, I mean, sometimes ending in positive things, certainly the American Revolution, but you also had the French Revolution and stuff at the end of the last great information age. So.
So, you've been in Bellarmine for 18 years.
Yeah.
Yeah, very cool. Tell us about Bellarmine. Why are you there? What is it about the place that keeps you around?
I'm there because I was in grad school and my daughter came along, and she's graduating this year.
Amazing.
So, yeah.
Good for you.
I went there, and I run retreats for them as well. It's a place, again, the Jesuits. I used to get in grad school, I'd get obviously into debates and discussions with people in college, and people would always go, "You're Jesuit educated, aren't you?" Because
you can tell.
Do your logical fallacies, you know how to debate and how to make points, and it gave me something that I was able to use.
The single best class I ever took in high school.
Yeah.
Single best. I still use it every year of my life.
So is it true that and I was raised Catholic too, and Christian Brothers, ROTC school back in St. Paul. It wasn't Jesuit though. But my understanding of Jesuits is the Catholic Church feels they are educated to such an extent that if they believe something to be so, and can, make a case for it, it's so. Even if that goes against the teaching of the church.
Well,
What do you say to
you were worried about politics, man.
Politics, religion.
Yeah, right. The taboo.
this is all positive,
good. Yeah. We're a Catholic Jesuit school. Some will tell you they're certainly bad. Of course, there's Jesuit Pope now, so that's a big
Right.
deal. First time ever.
Yeah, best one ever. I love Francis.
Yeah, and
Cool.
so I don't know that that's necessary. I mean, it's not like an ex cathedra thing, or where they could just go against the teachings of the church.
I
But
thought it was more like the church just trusted them so much that by the time they said, "You are a Jesuit," that they were trusted to go out and...
well, that's a long and storied history, and there's people who know more about it than me at the school. But the Jesuits, for a long time, were the shock troopers. In other words, I study English literature, English history, and I'm very familiar with it. Jesuit was, you scared your kids with that word, all right? In England, you told your kids the Jesuits were going to get you, right? Because they were supposedly, again, the shock troopers. But Ignatius also, it's interesting that we have a Jesuit pope, because Ignatius did not want, even Bellarmine, who was a cardinal, he was leery of Jesuits holding high posts in the church, just because he wanted them out doing the education and so there was a lot of discernment and prayer about whether or not to, a Jesuit should take a position like that. But yeah, I mean, education was the center thing. I mean, Ignatius was a soldier. It's a funny story. Just the technology piece, for example, people are, Ignatius, he would love having an iPad. And Ignatius, the Jesuits exist because Ignatius, after being wounded in a battle, was stuck, and there were only 2 books he could read while he was recovering. And one was The Life of Christ, and Lives of the Saints, I think. And he read those, and because he couldn't get at the medieval romances and the knightly stories of heroism that he wanted to read, changed everything. And he came out and founded the Jesuits.
Serendipity.
Yeah. And so it's an interesting thing. Just one of those little tidbits. But as a result, he organized it, he understood, and he knew how to put people in the right places. And specifically, he understood that if you could educate the wealthy, because your problem was you were going to have a different set of problems educating wealthy people, but they could have a far greater influence on the world than you could have just by yourself. So in addition to the charitable works and all the good things, educationally, that was the understanding.
Very shrewd.
Yeah. So, and it's I just, again, the rigor and the fearless pursuit of the truth, and the balance between reason and emotion, and that those are both part of us that God gives us, and we have to find a way to work those together. Pretty central, and it's just something that's appealed to me. So between running retreats, and so I got another daughter who'll be a freshman even as this one's leaving, and so it's been great to me, and working with people like Bill Berg, and my brother's the president of the school now. He's a grad too, and so he gets to boss me around like he did when we were kids. So. You can't just say the Norton. You have to say a specific work from the Norton, okay?
Hey, class is over, all right? Just let the girls talk.
Well, we have one book for lit, right? It's just packed, this big, fat Norton anthology.
And you can't ask a friend. It's
They're all talking back and forth, or sitting and looking.
You don't have to say the one you think I want you to say, okay?
Well, my favorite was was a short story, The Yellow Wallpaper.
Oh, Charlotte Perkins Gilman,
I
yeah.
thought that was so good, but I also loved learning about Ray Bradbury,
Uh-huh.
those short stories. And my special project was Fahrenheit 451.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That I was the only one who read that in the class because we each presented on a book, and I loved it.
That's a tremendous book. Bradbury's
Yeah, it is.
tremendous.
Yeah.
Tremendous. There's an HBO, I don't know what they're going to do with it, but HBO's
Oh, yeah.
done a remake
Isn't
of that.
there a movie coming out?
Yeah.
Fahrenheit 451 too.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Be interesting to see. Usually the movie is not as good as the book.
Well, and again, that's another book about reading. It's so hard, it's a book about stories, and it's very hard. Huxley's Brave New World is the same way. I mean, it's just really, it becomes a different thing.
So how about
because the medium is the
culture
message.
of, that we were discussing of, unplugging or multitasking and multi-screening. I mean, you must hear a lot of pontificating from people of our generation about how lost you all are.
Not
Do
these
we
guys.
just sound like a bunch of
Not
old...
these ones.
These guys are all the
Yeah,
hope,
these are-
man.
Yeah.
Oh, every generation is.
Right?
Are you taking
Totally got
time
it.
to unplug, or do you not find reason to do that, or...
I should more than I do. I see what you mean. Like, even having my phone sitting here is distracting because I'm thinking about all the things that are like coming
Yeah.
up on there. Like,
I'm missing
not-
everything.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, not that I'm like even missing anything. Just that like there's things like happening on there all the time. So I almost feel like obligated to be on it.
Yeah.
Like, to know, because if I don't, like, I'll be somehow like out of the know. Like,
Right.
yeah.
I feel the same way.
And it's also important that we know it, too. I'm sometimes... It's so funny. I did social media for a little while, and then I was like, why would I care? So then I started posting things like, if you're posting about your life, you can't be living it at the same time. Discuss. And for some reason, I became unpopular on social. I can't imagine why. Right?
But you know what? There's some beauty in social media too. I mean,
No question, the connection part of it, right? And
love having
yeah,
a connection
some of that
with
stuff's
people
great.
I haven't I wouldn't have communicated with these people for the rest of my life.
Yeah, but
for
then
sure.
there's also the people that there's a reason that you haven't communicated.
Oh yeah,
right?
well, but you unfriend them.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah, they're gone.
Yeah.
You give them the Heidi Ho. See you later. Yeah.
Well, I'm almost wondering if this is going to skip a generation, because a lot of times we talk about the kids we babysit or our nieces and nephews and things like that, and how they're always on their iPads, and I'm never going to give my 4-year-old an iPad. So I'm wondering if we're kind of realizing the effects that
I don't
we're
think
on
so. I've
young
got 3
kids.
granddaughters, and by the time they were 2 or 3 years old, they're scrolling pages on iPads and pretty savvy with it. I mean, it's very intuitive stuff.
It's just so, and this is the other thing that comes in is, it goes back to Jeff Goldblum in the first Jurassic Park movie, right? It's the fundamental crux of our problem with science, and that is we get so excited about whether or not we can do something that we don't stop and think about whether or not we should do something, right? And we're so eager to get it out, and this pace has accelerated and accelerated. I mean...
But I'm very hopeful. I mean,
Yeah.
two things is, one is the generations always find a way to figure it
Yeah.
out, and the second is they always find a way to figure it out to drive their parents nuts.
Right. And the other thing, the ship is going to sink.
No, that's right.
Okay, there's going to be a collapse.
That's right.
Somebody is going to find a way to shut off the satellites,
Mm-hmm.
to crash the system, and we're going to either survive and know what to do, or we're going to be standing around barrels in the middle of the street burning garbage.
Well, see, and that's one of the interesting things if you think about...
Not to be a conspiracy theorist.
I thought
but
you wanted to
it's
stay
gonna
positive
happen.
here.
It's going to happen.
Well, no, but here's the interesting thing is, so studying Anglo-Saxon, so I did medievalism, and we do Beowulf and stuff in the class, and the Anglo-Saxon literature, it's very interesting because there's all these Roman ruins. Not only did they forget how to do the things, so if you go and there's forced air heating and plumbing, right, in Bath, in the baths, and not only did they forget how to do it, they forgot that human beings could do that. So in their poetry, it's the giants. What happened to the giants that built this stuff, right? Now, think about it. If the system if the thing collapses and it goes out, how are you going to get the information, right? If you move away from books
Right.
and you don't have that stuff,
Right.
I mean, think about it. If you had to get something off of a floppy disk now, right? Even that
Right.
would be like, wait, what?
Yeah.
And
Let's
so
go through DOS.
again, you get You get to the point where you do get, and that's, there's cycles obviously in civilizations, but then there's also colossal breaks.
Right.
Right.
Have you ever been to Pompeii?
I have not.
It is incredible.
Oh, I'm sure.
They knew how to live better than we do now. I mean, obviously we're talking about how the rich lived, but I mean, it was that indoor plumbing, everything. It was a remarkable society, and then we went through the Dark Ages.
Right.
How did that happen?
I always loved to picture the Roman guy there as the Viking hordes are coming in, going, wait, look, it's nice, we got it all right, and they don't, and it's interesting cultural collision because I talked about resentment and gratitude, right? That there's a sense that if you can't build it and you don't understand it, you just destroy it. And that comes, and that's not gone from humanity either. Right. There's elements that do the same thing.
Seems to be ingrained.
No, right?
There's the fear of the unknown.
Right, and rather than wait to find out the accomplishments, or how it works, it's just they're not even able to see, because the worldview is so different. They're not even able to see the advantage. I mean, it's one of those
What's
things.
the next favorite book?
Oh yeah,
Okay, well, I like the one about the albatross.
The Rime of the Ancient Mariner by Samuel Taylor Coleridge.
Good book. Also, there was another one that you read.
Is there one about the albatross?
A
The
guy
wedding guest?
leaving like this family to go to the city or something.
Michael, a pastoral poem by Wordsworth. Yep. Yeah. That's a great piece.
Good.
Two romantic poets.
Oh, go ahead. You can go back to it.
I liked The Vanity of Human Wishes with Samuel Johnson.
Correct. Yeah. It's a good piece. Juvenalian satire, yeah.
Who's down there? Who's this?
Hi.
Kate's got one.
Oh no, not yet.
Not yet?
She's
I
feeling
like
bad
the
because she
one
can't
about
remember.
the albatross too, though.
The one about the albatross. It's funny. I was teaching at UW, and this colleague of mine, he was teaching, and we always had stories. And he came in and he said to me, "So we were talking about slavery and stuff in this class, and the girl in the back was trying to tell me this guy she was talking about, and finally she just said, the guy with the funny hat." And I realized that she was talking about Abraham Lincoln.
Wow.
As the guy with the funny hat.
That was like my boss
And
came
I
to
thought,
town a few
wow.
years ago, and we were driving through the Battery Street Tunnel in Seattle, and it was about 20 minutes later. He goes, "Hey, man, what's that big tall thing with the disky on top?" I'm like, "The Space Needle?" Yeah. That's
Right.
a pretty iconic
Yeah.
feature here in Seattle. It's been around since the World's Fair back in the 60s.
Disky thing.
Yeah, the
Right.
disky thing up on top.
Mm.
Yeah.
Well, I'm not giving you a hard time. Pear, I am giving a hard time too, but that's just because I wouldn't be me if
One
I
of my
didn't.
favorites of all time, kind of gripped me, short book, Angela's Ashes.
Mm-hmm.
Always liked.
It's a good book.
It was a good book, but not so fond of the rest of Frank McCourt's
Right.
stuff.
Not
Just
the
kept
feel
reading.
good, not exactly the feel good book of the year.
No,
Angela's
not
Ashes,
at all.
but
Not at all.
yeah.
But you just
No,
kept
it's good.
waiting for him to get a break, and
Right.
they never got a break.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's got an interesting
Crystal,
story.
do you say?
Oh,
What was your favorite?
I like Rime of the Ancient Mariner. There's an Alexander Pope one that I cannot remember the name of. And I wrote a paper on it, and it was like a really long tome that you gave us. Like,
To read over break,
I don't know what's
I gave you the packet, the Essay on Man.
That's it.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. Yeah, I like that one.
Wow.
And I also like Heart of Darkness as well.
Oh, that's a tremendous book. Yeah. Conrad, that book. Berg's a huge Conrad guy. Every year when I read Conrad, I go into it because I always find something new in it, and he's the guy to see on that one. Tremendous, yeah.
How about the Gospel according to Biff?
Gospel according to Biff.
Coming into my dark side.
Yeah. Is it Christopher Moore? I always get him and Thomas. I don't know. It was a great book.
Gospel according to Biff.
Gospel according to Biff.
Like Biff and
It's
Salesman.
so yeah, but
Not from Back to the Future.
it's
I was going to say, yeah, no.
it's a story. It's a story about all of
Hey, McFly.
all of the world's religions, and it starts out with Jesus and one of his buddies when he was a little kid. He was just finding out that he had powers, and so they had this lizard on the stairs, and Jesus would chop its head off and then bring it back to life. And they just thought it was great fun. But it goes through, monasteries and, Islam and all the different... It's a very cool book. And real fun. Yeah.
Let me ask you this.
Yes.
When you were reading in high school or in college, how do you compare that to when you read, when you teach something? And the reason I ask is I enjoyed reading when I was in high school and when I was in college. I got a master's in literature. But I didn't really read that much stuff. I tried to, and I didn't understand structures of things until I started teaching English 101. And then I really, because I had to, I had to learn what it was. Then I reread Robert Penn Warren, I reread this. Whenever I was going to teach something, I read it, Gatsby, to understand what it was. How do you look at reading now that you teach something compared to, deciding what you wanted to do as a profession reading?
I don't know. I'm certainly a more attentive reader. I read every year. I reread. I try to do what my kids do every night. So whatever they're reading, I try to read again. That's about my prep. I got the notes I want to hit.
So you read it along with the class?
Yeah.
Okay, we're going to read chapter 1. So you read it
yeah, and I'll read it again. And most of the stuff's... and if a book doesn't give me new stuff every time I read it, I'll try and pull it from the thing. Because I always talk to kids, when you encounter text, it's like life. We were talking the other day about the number 3 in literature and why 3 is important. Because, 3, there's you, there's the world, and then there's you interacting with the world. That's the third thing. So I always talk about reading as what I call coherence, right? Text doesn't do anything if you're not there to read it. But my capacity, I guess, as I got more widely read, the more I had read, and once I got comfortable with the notion that the stack of what I need to read was always going to be infinitely bigger than the stack of what I had read. Once I was okay with that, I don't know, it just enabled me to... And I'm always looking, and this is where I differ with a lot of my colleagues. I don't think writers write for professors. They don't. They write, not good ones. They write for people for whom the ship's going to sink.
I do love that analogy. That's really good.
No, I mean...
it's going to sink.
Oh, it does. Oh, it always does. Well, you got to figure out how to bring it back afloat.
Maybe 2 or 3 times today your ship will sink.
No, that's right. Yeah. I mean, the degrees are you'll spring a leak and you got to figure out how to do it.
Yeah.
And the great thing about it, and I talk it this all the time, and I learned it in 12 step, but, do the dishes, do the next thing that needs doing. There's always something that needs doing. And when the crisis comes, you want it, especially now, quick fix, they want to solve everything. They want the answers. And this is the illusion that, to the questions, I said it in one of my poems, I say we don't really see any more than we did in the Middle Ages or whatever. We're a bit less blind, but we don't really see anymore. And by that I mean into the things that really, the questions that we really have. Why does the ship sink? Why? The great thing about Life of Pi is they never tell you why the ship sinks. You don't know why. And there's no time to think about it. It just did. And so then the question is, what are you going to do? And how are you going to do it? And again, he is, choosing to work to survive every day with the full knowledge that he's probably not going to survive. I mean, that the odds are completely stacked. And how do you, I sit there and go, remember when you feel that way,
I know there's a way to, the way to serenity or, peace of mind for me. I remember back
is through hi-fi.
No, well, besides hi-fi.
That's obviously the answer.
Going back to, 07.
We're going to start rushing in now, man.
But music is an outlook, just like reading.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
But the great financial crisis of 2008, the global financial crisis, I was talking to my brother on the phone when it was all going down, and he's like, oh man, we're going to lose our jobs. And I said, you know what, though? We're survivors. So if everything does come crashing down, I'm going to be the mayor. You know what? It's going to be okay. We're going to figure this out. I've been in, and I don't want to sound arrogant. It's only because I have had my ass kicked and handed to me so many times in my life that I've been forced to be resilient.
Well, I'm right there with you.
Yeah.
I mean, what I do is I think no matter how bad I've got it, there are people in history who've had it a heck of a lot worse.
Man.
The people in the concentration camps in
Sure.
World War II. I mean, when people, or just being around in Europe in World War II, when people really were going to kill you.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's so, and that's one of the things we're losing. I mean, and again, it's a civilizational thing, right? I mean, that World War II, the reason those guys could go do that was because most of them were like, wait, you're going to give me shoes? And I'm going to get 3 meals a day?
Yeah.
I'm going to get 3 meals a day.
I'm in. Okay.
Yeah.
Better than what I had back home. Right? And but now it'd be like, if you had to do something like that, well, where's my Xbox? Excuse me? Right? I mean, it's a completely different thing.
About the military and those guys is that experience is, here's what you have to do. Well, you don't have a choice to fail.
Right.
Go make it happen. And, either make it happen or die trying.
Well, and there's a great moment in the book, and it's the most important moment, because he ends up on an island, and he finds out that the island's basically just eating him. And he can stay there and survive. I always tell the kids there's a difference between survival and living.
Yes.
And he chooses to get back in the boat with the tiger. Because he decides, whatever I'm here for, it's not just to feed this island. Yeah? And I'd rather die trying to do something that nobody will even know about, right? In other words, that's why that book changes lives. I mean, that as I go, look, it doesn't matter, especially for high school kids, it doesn't matter if anybody knows or, what they think. He goes,
because I know.
Whatever I'm here for, it's not just to, sure, science, we're all going to go to feed worms, all that stuff, but that's not all we're made for. We're not just to live.
Thanks. Now I'm a little less excited about reading the book.
I know
I know how that stinks anyway.
Well, I mean, you figured he makes it, right? Because at the very beginning, it's an interview with him after the fact. So,
all right, good.
Yeah,
What's
That's my
your
next
favorite
read.
book?
Lord of the Rings.
If you could read
Oh yes.
No, that's the reason I'm here. I have 5 brothers and sisters, and in the summer to keep us quiet while my little brother and sister napped, my mother would read to us. She read The Hobbit, she read Lord of the Rings. So that got me into reading.
Yeah.
And then it was comic books and fantasy science fiction.
And that's another thing.
And then all the other
Being
stuff.
read too.
Yeah.
What a beautiful thing that is.
Yeah.
beer, please. Yes.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. Wow.
I read to the guys sometimes.
Mark, by the way, this is my partner, Jonathan. Jonathan Mark.
Hey, Jonathan, how you doing?
Good.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too.
Good.
Yeah.
Lord of the Rings. Yes.
Yeah, I'm teaching Two Towers right now, actually.
Nice.
Favorite book series?
Oh, I've read it so many times.
Me too.
And and each time it's still really good.
No,
my dad actually got the original ones, so I came to read from those when they came out.
No, I mean it's it's funny. It's got so much in it, and
But he was living through it. I mean, the Nazis and everything else in Nazgul. I mean, you could see the impact of the world going down in flames.
Yeah.
Well, and again,
He made a couple.
Spoiler, but Frodo and Sam. The interesting thing about that book is it's divided into those parts, and so there's the really exciting stuff with lots of characters and big battles, and all the stuff as a kid you're like, okay. And I remember as a kid I was always bored by the Frodo Sam bit, just trudging.
Yeah.
But that's life.
Yeah.
Frodo and Sam's life, and Frodo, and this is crucial for Tolkien. That in the end, we were just talking about Faramir today and the debacle they did with him in the movie, but Frodo can't succeed. We can't defeat evil. We that's not in. That's
We can
in
only
bigger.
bring it to an
We
impasse.
just fight. We just
And we
keep
think
fighting.
all is lost and we're going down in flames.
That's right.
And then Gandalf shows up and saves the day.
Right. Or
actually,
Gollum ends up destroying the ring because Frodo can't do. No human being can do
But
it.
what I like is it's the common person, the small
That's
guy,
right.
who actually carries the whole story, who actually carries the war to the completion.
And that was so much his
it
experience in the
wasn't
First
Gandalf
World War.
saving the day.
Yeah.
It wasn't the kings and everybody else.
Yeah.
It was a guy and a gardener.
No. Right, and they were all, and everybody else just had to do their job, knowing that it didn't matter.
Yeah.
I mean, right? I mean,
We're going to fail. We're
if
doomed. I mean,
Frodo fails, none of this stuff that we're working so hard to do is even going to matter.
Yeah.
And
But that's the beauty of it, because you can either go down and say, well, gee, too bad, it's not going to matter, or let's try fighting and see if we can actually win this sucker.
it's the fight against despair is the only, and that's again the World War II. That's what Churchill brought to them. Was we just don't give up. We just don't. Yeah. We don't know how victory's going to come. The challenging thing as a Catholic and Christian is, well, victory's assured. There's supposed to be no doubt. I mean, evil and good are not equal, right? Most of the world wants people to think evil and good, but if good is an all-loving creator, then there's not an equality there. There's really no way, right? And yet it's so hard for us. All we have to do is not imagine that we're supposed to be the ones to bring the ultimate victory, but just keep fighting.
I mean, I've got so many favorite quotes there, but one of my favorite is Sam Gamgee, is the job that takes the longest is the job you don't start.
Oh, yeah.
That's so true. And the other is, even the wise do not see all ways.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, it's, sorry. That's...
Yeah. We just totaled out on you.
Oh, my gosh, yeah.
That's all right.
Yeah, we can do a whole thing on that. My gosh, I'm a geek that way. But yeah, that's what got me into literature. And I did a few papers in grad school on them, and then I had a professor tell me, those were great papers, don't ever do that again. And I said, okay. Lesson learned.
All right, well, I think we've got a lot in the can here. I think we should have enough for a good show, unless there's anything else that we leave anything out that we need to talk about. We can always do this again.
No, it'd be great. Yeah, no.
I really
tremendous. Yeah, me too.
Show. A lot of fun. It
Right
always
on.
is. We got a really kind of a relaxed. Looking for the word. It's been very organic. I mean, this thing has just kind of popped up. We don't know what it is, or what it's going to be, but it's been fun, and I appreciate you coming on.
Yeah, no, thanks. It's fun. Yeah. Right on.
Nice meeting you.
Nice to meet you.